Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this presentation today. I'm Bradley Williams, and I'm the director of the Defence Innovation Network, which is an association of universities in New South Wales and ACT, funded by the state government and the Department of Defence in Australia. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Dr. Andrii Paziuk. But before I do so, I'd just like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, on whose ancestral lands UTS stands, and pay respects to elders past and present, and also similarly pay respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people meeting us today. Associate Professor Paziuk is with the Taras Shevchenko National University in Ukraine, and he's also a senior advisor on the Cyber Diia project lead at Ministry of Digital Transformation in Ukraine. He's been a Fulbright Fellow at the American University Washington College of Law, and he holds a PhD in International Public Law from Taras Shevchenko National University, and also studied law at the Harvard Law School and the Berkman Center for Internet and Society in Singapore. He's served as the head of the analytical department and co-chief of the scientific council in the Ministry of Transportation and Communications in Ukraine. And in separate activities, he led the non-government organization known as Privacy Ukraine for 6 years, in addition to his work as a legal advisor for several organizations. He has participated and sponsored a number of regional and international meetings in human rights and the internet in Ukraine. He will speak to us today about cyber resilience in a time of war. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a great pleasure. So my presentation today is devoted to cyber resilience, national resilience, and digital opportunities which Ukraine faces now in time of war. And we believe that this challenges Ukraine will manage together with our partners, and we also believe that Australian community, Australian people, our allies will support us in this fight for rule-based order. So we are doing it for all of us, for the democratic world, and that's why it's important for us, your support. So Ukraine faced unprecedented in modern history challenges with full-scale invasion by Russia 16 months ago started, and a lot of damage caused, critical infrastructure destroyed. We have around 9 million people displaced, 6 million left Ukraine, seeking for better, safe places, surviving from this war. Next, please. And how Ukraine still remain resilient, and what is the challenge we faced and how we manage this. And in the first days of war, everybody talked about how many days Ukraine be independent, and it was estimation that three days, 1 week, 1 month, 2 months, 6 months, now 16 months. Ukraine not only remain in this good capacity for struggling for own independence, fighting but also thinking how to rebuild and reconstruct. Next slide, please. So, first days of war, Russian tanks in capital of Ukraine, and we have a lot of people left Kiev, me too, with my family, but we was not so happy. We chose our summer house near Bucha, and you know the history with Bucha. So we spent 2 weeks in occupation without electricity, without heating, with all environment full of battlefields in air, on ground. So we was lucky to leave this area and spent 1 month in western part of Ukraine, but then we returned back to Kiev. So because it's our it's our city, it's where we live, it's our house. We need to protect it. Next slide, please. A lot of civilians suffering from what is happening. A lot of damages. Several slides showing them the level of these destructions. So, unfortunately, Russia does not care about civilians and does not care about international humanitarian law, and their attacks are not selected. So, and their missile attacks usually attacks not only military stuff, but whatever on their way appears. So, and our civilians are suffering, and for our state, for government of Ukraine, it was a challenge how to deal with millions of displaced persons, this humanitarian crisis. Next slide, please. So you see the center of Kiev, you see a lot of children on the bridge destroyed by missiles. And it's a reality in which we still live now. Next slide, please. So Ukrainian men are banned to leave country, and they're 60 years old, all still in Ukraine in order to fight. And it's martial law prohibits leaving Ukraine, but a lot of children and wives left Ukraine, and we faced this challenge how to remain resilient, how to still be fighting but living. So what challenges government of Ukraine faced? And with millions of people suffering from all these disasters around, the government of Ukraine established a program with points of invincibility, points of resilience. More than 9,500 points were established around Ukraine in all regions. And in the right picture, you see how blackouts faced by Ukrainian citizens were resolved. So in these points, we provided services for our citizens, allowing them to have a safe place, warm place for recharging their devices. And devices are important in this resilience for Ukraine. So digital tools were used to ensure that this digital citizenship happens, and government assists citizens with problems they are facing. Next slide, please. So our resilience is in cyber social domain. We faced also a lot of manipulations and propaganda machine used by Russians for last 20 years. In this period of time were also used against efforts of Ukraine to gain assistance from around the world. And we understand that for complexity of this topic. So for any nation, such kind of challenge requires understanding in what domains you need to operate, what actions needed in physical systems, resilience, how to protect information space and build information resilience. And also, cyber domain was also battlefield domain during this war. Next slide, please. So we need to understand how it happens based on the concept of cognitive warfare. And now in several research institutions in Ukraine, we are doing this research, examining lessons which can be learned from what happened in Ukraine, and we are happy to share these lessons with our allies. Yes, please. So cyber attacks is an integral part of kinetic warfare. And the most challenging part of this cyber warfare is that we are facing a lot of unknown threats previously. The tactics of cyber warfare changed during these 16 months. Next slide, we can see most dangerous cyber troops of Russia used against Ukraine. All of them connected with military and intelligence staffs. And behind of these APT groups, malware actors, we see traces to intelligence and military staff of Russian Federation. So up is the intelligence unit of Moscow. It's FSB, security service, and also military intelligence units on behalf of all these malicious actors acting not only against Ukraine, but also against all democratic world. We identified most dangerous attacks with a high gravity for our infrastructure, and our cybersecurity agency, which is titled Special Service for Communications, Governmental Communications and Information Protection. They identified together with partners most of attacks, investigated them, and we have already a database of most dangerous tools used against Ukrainian political infrastructure, and we are happy to share with our allies all these findings and lessons learned. We can identify these 4 lessons. First is like basic, that cyber attacks is part of this warfare. Russians examined for many years vulnerabilities in our critical infrastructure and use them for zero-day vulnerabilities. And also they used hackers for intelligence services, for gathering personal data about Ukrainians, especially on occupied territories, in order to make census data available for them and making these fake referendums for joining these territories to Russia based on the free will of the population, which has undergone used to be supporters of the occupational power. So next. State registries of Ukraine is our digital national assets, sovereign assets. We place them this way based on the attacks in kinetic field and also in cyber field. It was a decision made by our president and our government to move our registries to clouds. And around 100 state registries now migrated to cloud: Google, AWS, Microsoft Azure, Oracle. And we thank the government of Poland, who was first supporters of Ukraine, provided also capacity, server capacities, own capacities for Ukrainian registries during this migration to cloud track. Next. And that's also evidence that Russians does not comply with international humanitarian law, but also rules established now for cyberspace warfare. We have responsible behavior states norms defined by United Nations, anonymously approved by General Assembly of United Nations. They are attacking now our humanitarian centers. They are attacking our backup offices where our data reserved. They are attacking our CERT, SOCs. They are attacking all vital infrastructure for rebuilding after attacks. So they're aimed to destroy all infrastructure, and there are no justification for such actions. So we estimate now costs needed for telecom, for recovery, reconstruction. You see this estimations, but it's just initial process now, and it's data at the beginning of this year, and damage is still caused to infrastructure. So from scientific point of view and academic perspective, we need to understand that traditional approach during peacetime for cybersecurity, for resilience, is different in wartime. And we need to invest now more in our resilience, making more investments in technologies, in solutions, in design of our infrastructure to be resilient by design, not by disaster. And it's my call to you also to think about it, that resilience must be not by disaster, but by design. So the second part of my presentation is about how digital tools used for ensuring national resilience. The Ministry of Digital Transformation is leading agency in Ukraine, which during wartime established a lot of useful tools for citizens, allowing them to be informed, advised, provided financial assistance. We have national application used for identification, which is based on our mobile phones. And during wartime, additional 6 million people became subscribers of our application Diia. Diia means action in Ukrainian, but it also means connection between a state and citizens. We now facing challenge how to use our digital tools, how to use business intelligence models to be more resilient, to rebuild, to build back better Ukraine. And this challenge is now is a task for Ministry of Digital Transformation and Government of Ukraine. So our digital ecosystem, how we build new governance model in Ukraine, how to be smart and resilient at the same time is a big challenge, but we are now developing strategies, and we are also inviting our allies, inviting Australian researchers to assist us to build new strategies for digital resilience. And my colleague Anna assisting us in this as well, Anna Pogrebna from Charles Sturt University. But we are thinking about broader coalition, and I think that research of this resilience strategies will be useful for many countries. Ukrainian resilience, social resilience, individual resilience, and national resilience are based on also on ground support, and it was established through administrative services. We now have in Ukraine more than 3,300 centers, which provides one window, one-step approach to delivering governmental services. And already more than 200 services available online. So by using smartphone, our citizens being in different places around the world can use governmental services without any restriction. So our application Diia used not only for communication with government, but also for integrating G2B, G2G solutions. And it's used by businesses for identification purposes, for delivering services. And this is integral part of our resilience, of our digital resilience. And of course, data-driven rebuilding is what is integral part of our resilience strategy. In this way, we're now reforming our state statistical service, making it like an open data agency, working with different stakeholders and collecting data, delivering data, providing data analysis services for needs of government of Ukraine, but also for businesses. And it will be a huge development of data governance, smart data governance in Ukraine in the next few years. And the third part of my presentation is about MilTech, which is closely linked to the Defense Innovation Network research areas. We believe that we are at the initial stage of our cooperation with Australian counterparts, and we are very interested to share lessons learned and new inventions Ukrainians made during war, especially in field of usage of drones for different purposes, including military, but also for demining of territories, for delivering humanitarian assistance during war. And we believe that the future of this war for Ukraine depends on how we will use drones, because we have a highly precise ammunition supported, Ukraine supported by our allies with highly precise ammunition, artillery, and other systems. But for better targeting enemies, we use drones, and in this way, in this not equal balance of power with Russians, who are prevails on our military forces in many times, in 10 times, we are having advantage in the battlefield because we have very precise and new technologies allowing us to be more effective and efficient at the battlefield. And last month, Ukrainian government established a new military hub, innovations hub, which is started Brave One. And I think you can be brave too, using our experience. We are inviting Defense Innovation Network partners, members, to engage with Brave One. Brave One established and funded by the Ministry of Digital Transformation of Ukraine, Ministry of Defense, the General Staff of Armed Forces of Ukraine, Ministry of Economy. So government of Ukraine supports this initiative, but also private companies are very interested in what is happening in Ukraine because their inventions have a short period from fabrics to testing. In Ukraine, what you are made today, tomorrow is tested on battlefield. And the best results you have showing what effectiveness of your ammunition based on real case, real situations. So next, please. That is structure of Brave One and how it operates. It supports developers, investors, accelerators, and supports R&D centers. And it's a huge potential for our collaboration with the Australian R&D and, of course, private community and investors. So we are focusing on intelligence. We are focusing on automated control, communication, information systems for special forces. We are focusing on rocket and artillery means, electronic warfare systems, drones, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, demining, space technologies, navigation and geoinformation systems, and also what is needed for our combatants, but also civilians, is how to deliver medical services in these risk areas. We have several tracks in Brave One devoted to different types of innovations, and we are very interested to collaborate with R&D community, with accelerators in Australia and globally. And this is a few slides about our cooperation and what we are expecting, what opportunities we have. And we are very thankful for Australian government and for Australian people for support already provided with like 90 vehicles, artillery, equipment supported for Ukraine, but we think it's not enough. And the Australian potential for support of Ukraine is much bigger. And next one. And of course, Ukraine is fighting for rule-based order. So we're not fighting only for independence, for our safety, for our survivance, but we are fighting for peace and for our future, for common shared digital future. And You can see on this few outlets that Ukraine now is in position asking our allies to support uh, with planes to support our on-ground operations. And Australia indeed has already some platforms which are not used and which are to be utilized, which can be like very small contribution, but very useful for Ukraine, because we are now in this position that we need F-16, F-18s to fight in protecting our air from Russian missiles and from attacks from different types of ammunition which happened in air. So that's what I tried to deliver today. And of course, if you have questions, I would be happy to answer them. Thank you for your attention.
It's on.
Can you hear me? Yes. All right. So are there any questions for our speaker today? Maybe while you're thinking, I'll ask the first one, which is, can you comment on the importance of the collaboration between various ministries of government in ensuring appropriate responses and resilience?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, I need our government now works as one team. I think our government works more productive in several times than before war. So because we are now trying to do what's not been done previously and to accelerate our victory in this war. So our victory is not based only on government, but also how our community united. So we have unprecedented united reunion of nation, and we have such a great support from all parts of Ukraine as we have a common like enemy which we are fighting. And that's now, there are no talks about like corruption or something in this way, because everybody understands that Ukraine needs effective, efficient governance to deal with all these challenges. So that's why you see on the Brave One initiative that it's a joint initiative of different ministries, and they are truly working as one team. That's a good example of collaboration between agencies.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Doctor, for the presentation. Enjoyed it very much. Something I found interesting, I think, when you spoke about social resilience and things as simple as keeping these devices going so that people can communicate with each other, families and everything, and how important that is. Here in Australia, we're no stranger to these being a double-edged sword too, and as far as being a vulnerability to cybercrime, to particularly with people working on sensitive projects, the threat of espionage and influence operations. Can you comment perhaps on how that plays out in this particular scenario with those devices being beneficial to that social resilience, but also being a threat? And the second part really is there any examples of how that's being combated?
Yeah, thank you for your question. Our application Diia is used as a tunnel. It's a device which not collects data. It only provides access to data from registries. In this way, you can't damage registries through this application. You can't change data. So it's a communication tool which is highly protected and tested by different vendors, but cybersecurity companies. And we also perform several types of bug bounties to identify any vulnerabilities. So it's a constant work to improve this application security. So first of all, and by design, it does not contain personal data. So that's the architectural decision made solution to avoid any risks connected with personal data. So that's the most, I think, advanced solution now for managing security by design.
Thank you. I'm just wondering how far ahead of the outbreak of the war Diia was in development or in existence. So how much did it predate the war? So how much has been developed prior and then during?
Yeah. So before war, it was like 12 million people using Diia with smartphones. And during war, because of programs established by government, required citizens to use the application to get financial assistance, support from international community for internally displaced persons. So we had experiences plus 6 million registration to use this platform. And also Diia provides for such additional services, like you can put your request to government for compensation of losses during war. You can put application for rebuilding of damaged property using this application, but you can also use it for even reporting if you see crimes committed during war. You can use it for reporting if you see enemies. We have specific applications. So all these tools are very useful for citizens. So they're convenient, and convenience is a number one principle for usage of this application. So that's a precondition for success of any application that's truly useful and based on demand of citizens.
Right, thank you.
It's for the people online.
Okay. Yeah, again, thank you for your time. And just further to the mobile device, the application, it's my understanding, is that also a form of identification for citizens? And if so, is that going to then become a legal requirement for all citizens to carry a mobile device? And at what age will that be a requirement?
Yeah, thank you for your question. So Diia is not obligatory for usage. It's just convenient for citizens to use it. And for identification authorization purposes, authentication purposes, it use face recognition, but also we have all our ID documents provided through this application. So we have also QR codes for checking documents through this application. So in this way, our government officials, like police officers, can check these documents, and you don't need to show your driver license or other documents, because you can enter any premises and provide all documents based on what you have in your mobile application. So that's the way how it works. And we have special program for elderly population, for not for people who are not, for whom smartphones are not available. They still can use administrative services network in this area, and assistance, and these administrative services can provide them support for usage of governmental portal without using application. So that's inclusive model. Thank you for the question.
Just opportunity for our listeners online. Any questions from anybody attending online today?
We have a question from Alex, and he wrote, considering the lack of a cyber Pearl Harbor event, what is importance of cyber defense at national, government, and commercial organization levels?
Thank you for your question. So we have in Ukraine comprehensive cybersecurity strategy and annual plans, and planning process for implementation of strategy includes several stages, and each of these stage provides that we are thinking about not only governmental cybersecurity but also private sector cybersecurity. So we have a comprehensive vision that, especially in time of war, cybersecurity is priority for all our networks. And we have also critical infrastructure protection legislation, which establishes rules for reporting of incidents, for getting regular audits for compliance with regulations and with international standards. So in this way, we have a cybersecurity governance model in Ukraine. I think that it's not maybe top in ranking, but at a pretty high level. And these lessons learned by our cybersecurity agencies provide us useful lessons that private-public partnership is very important, not only in military field, but also in cybersecurity domain. And we have a lot of supporters from private sector for Ukrainian cybersecurity agencies now. I can mention, of course, Microsoft and other companies who are through their expertise and analytical support shares threats, shares indicators of compromise with Ukraine, and we in turn also share with our allies all this valuable information for collective defense, for collective counter actions in cyber domain. So that's the reality in which we live now, and I think it's the best practices which can be used by other nations as well.
Do you have any more questions from anyone online? You can simply unmute and speak up if you have such a question. All right, we have another one in the audience.
Thank you. What's the single most important thing that Australia can do right now to help Ukraine?
I think Australia, thank you for your question. Australia should help itself to build more resilient and advanced cybersecurity system, thinking about threats which are not identified at the moment. Because if you are building your systems based on only identified threats, you never be prepared for something which are not expected. So resilience means capabilities to react in situation of unexpected threats. And that capacity should be built by Australian cybersecurity ecosystem. And you need to also understand what faced Ukraine during long period of time before full-scale invasion. So we faced cyber hybrid threats in information domain as well. We faced propaganda. We faced attempts to control technologically our infrastructure by Russians. We faced influence operations, psychological operations, and I think that Australians underestimate threats at the moment. So they are thinking that the enemy is far, that they can't reach Australia, but you're not thinking about that enemies can be already inside your community, and that such threats should be identified now. And your policies should be structured in this way to make Australia more technologically independent, autonomous, not depending on in critical fields, on critical services from foreign countries, and critical software used by government and by private sector also should be regulated in a way to avoid additional threats which you don't see now, but of course at 0 day can be used against you. So how Australia can support Ukraine now? Of course, we need, first of all, capabilities, military capabilities, and Australia can spend more in this field. And I shown in this slide that now it's even less than our neighbor, East European neighbors countries. Australia donation to Ukraine is still at the so low level, but you can use this as opportunity to renovate your own military ammunition, your forces, because you can provide Ukraine at some conditions, of course, ammunition which are not used now by Australia and is going to be replaced. So it will be very useful for Ukraine to get this. And of course, for capacity development, for joint projects, research projects, innovation projects, we are very interested in research collaboration. And Ukraine has a huge potential. We have like 250,000 of IT guys now without good works in Ukraine. And Ukrainian software developers are famous around the world for good quality, efficiency of work. So I think that Ukrainians' potential of software developers, engineers, huge, and you can use it for joint ventures, for investing in programs in Ukraine, in Australia, and overseas. So let's do it together, and I would be happy to establish contacts to assist in building businesses, relationships with Ukrainian counterparts. So that's will be a good track for our cooperation, for activization of this cooperation, including cyber dialogue between Ukraine and Australia, including defense dialogue and innovations. That's potential for which is to be beneficial for both countries, for innovators, for investors, for building more resilient infrastructure in Australia and in Ukraine together.
Well, thanks, Andrii, for sharing your insights and learnings from your current circumstances with us. Really valuable. So it only remains then to join me to thank
Really?
Andrii for his.
We have one more question.
One more question.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Excellent. All right. So my question is, Ukraine has been the target of widespread advanced cyber attacks since the annexation of Crimea in 2014, with some very famously advanced malware that's caused problems across the country. So my question was, after these attacks that began in 2014, what was the time frame that Ukraine went from a relatively peacetime cybersecurity posture to a wartime posture? And what were the key steps in making that transition?
Thank you for your question. Yes, most grave attacks Ukraine faced from 2014, starting from 2014. We had blackout in the regions, in western regions of Ukraine in January 2015, with several energy generation companies were totally disabled for several days, and like 250,000 households remained without supply of electricity for this period. Ukraine examined, Ukrainian government examined situation, and we approved new legislation. We approved new cybersecurity law, establishing comprehensive system of coordination between agencies. And with the support of our partners, we developed a model which is, I think, effective at this moment. We have a National Coordination Center for Cybersecurity under National Security and Defense Council, reporting directly to President. We have special agencies coordinated under government of Ukraine. We have 9 cybersecurity agencies in Ukraine, including State Service for Special Communications and Information Protection, Cyber Police. We have cybersecurity unit in Ministry of Defense. In intelligence units, we have a special cybersecurity units and SOC centers in our central bank, National Bank of Ukraine. All of them coordinated, and we have a threat intelligence sharing platform used to coordinated exchange of information about vulnerabilities, indicators of compromise, other threats. In this way, we have also regular tabletop exercises during which our top leadership performs training how to deal with cyber incidents at national level. And one of this was organized like a week before full-scale invasion. I participated in this high-level tabletop exercises where all our top officials trained to work in situation of cyber crisis. And in a week, the war started, this full-scale invasion started in Ukraine, and the scenario used by that tabletop exercises at that moment was so realistic to what happened in practice. So we were trained during 8 years after first annexation invasion by Russia. We are advanced now in military and cyber capacities. So I think that it was crucial for Ukraine to have these 8 years effectively used for improving our capabilities in both military and cyber fields. So that's how it happened and what we have now. Thank you for your question.
All right, last opportunity for any questions, if there are any. None? All right, well, Andrii, thank you so much. Thanks for presenting. And thanks to everyone who joined us online.